And the nurse says, And I said, what's And she's like, do you really want to know? And I'm like, yeah, tell me, like, what's up? And she's like, it's twins. And I was like, oh. I have been operating in a 24-year-long trigger. And everything that I had experienced from my very first abortion until abortion recovery was part of the trigger.
Hi, Boo. Hey.
Hey.
So, just as a small thank you for being one of my first guests, I did get you a secure sweatshirt. So
I'm excited about
Thank
it.
thank you.
So excited.
I hope you love it.
I do. I already love it. I love the topic.
Yeah.
So
we're going to jump right in. Do you remember?
Okay.
First of all, I don't know why y'all entrusted y'all's lives to me. I was probably 20, maybe 21 at the time, driving the church van to Birmingham.
Yep.
And y'all felt like the church van was shaking the whole time. That was not me. You couldn't drive that mug over 55 miles an hour without it shaking a little bit.
No, you could not.
And we were on the interstate. But do you remember the very first time? That's when you kept telling me about this book, right? And so you play the audiobook. Nobody in the back could hear it, okay? Sound in the van was terrible.
Yeah.
But you sit in the passenger seat. I'm 20 years old driving all of these grown women to a women's conference in Birmingham.
Yeah.
And you start playing the book Boundaries for Me by Henry Cloud.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I remember.
Girl. I remember like slapping the steering wheel. I think I swerved a little bit. Everybody in the back like, oh my God, what's going on? The book literally was life-changing for me.
Yeah.
But I want to know, like, what was your defining moment when you knew that you needed to implement better boundaries?
Being a severe people pleaser with no boundaries has literally ruined my life. So I don't even remember who gave me that book. I do. It was my friend Brandy that worked with me, and she was telling me about the book that she was reading, and I was like, I like to read. I'm going to listen to it, So I started listening to the book. I'm like, so they've been following me my whole life?
Mm-hmm.
They've been in my pockets. They had to be, because everything in this book was literally everything that I had experienced my whole life. And it was just so like, how do I fix this? Because I don't like this. Like, this is the part about me that I absolutely hate, and I can't overcome it. And that book was the part where it kind of really like was the aha moment. Like, okay, you really need help. Like, you're not normal. This is not normal. Normal people have boundaries. You really need to work on yours.
Yeah. And I remember you, because you were telling me your story about it when you were telling me about the book. And I'm like, okay, that's good. That's fine. But you were telling me your story, and you were talking about, at the time, the person that you needed to implement boundaries with the most. And you were grown.
Yeah.
And you were talking about how you needed to implement them with your mom.
And I think at that moment, I think it was the most broken I've ever been. And because I had made a choice to marry somebody that she completely said no to, I was in that place of everything's her fault, nothing's my fault moment, So I was trying to have boundaries against her, but really I needed boundaries for myself. Like, I was out of control. And she was just saying, hey, this is not a good idea. And she was right. Mom, you were right. Okay, you were right. But it was true. It was not a good idea. And I was so mad at her because she wasn't doing what I wanted her to do or participate in this delusional event that I was participating in. And I was mad. So
What do you mean she didn't participate?
She didn't come to the wedding. Like, she completely said, I do not agree. I don't condone this marriage. No, this is not good for you, and I will not be participating.
Oh my gosh.
So she did not come to my wedding. She did not participate. She took a hard boundary, a hard stance, and said no.
That's, first of all, that's mind blowing. That's literally my first time ever hearing that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that because we definitely live in a society where, like, especially for parents, they tell them, like, oh, you're supposed to support your child no matter what. Like, you're supposed to show up. They're supposed to know that they can count on you. Looking back, are you upset, or do you understand her choice, or do you still wish she had come to the wedding? Or
I understand her choice. I
Yeah.
respect her choice and I understand it because I was truly delusional. Um, I had made a choice. Like, part of my story is that I never made a choice for myself. So it was always somebody telling me what I should do with my life. So when I finally said, I am going to make a choice, I'm standing on business, this is the choice that I'm making, I'm standing 10 toes down in it. And she said, well, I'm not supporting your choice. And I was like, you should be excited that I'm finally making a choice for myself. And she's like, no, if you're going to make this choice, you're going to do it by yourself. And at first, I was so mad, so disappointed. But her taking that step back allowed God to become the biggest person in my life, to become the biggest voice in my life. God could not be God in my life if she was still God in my life for me. So, unfortunately, it was so painful. It hurt so bad. But it literally throwed me into the arms of Christ. And I had to learn how to lean on him and not lean on people.
Yeah.
So it really catapulted my relationship with God in the weirdest way. But I was still in very much so denial, as if it was still everybody else's fault and not my fault that I was in that situation.
That's really good because it's hard when you're in the situation, right? I have told people before, because God gave me this revelation. It don't mean I always listen to it or like it or understand it.
Right.
But he would say, Ieshia, why are you upset with people with the things that I've allowed them to do? I was using them. I allowed them to drop you. I allowed them to, like move away in that season, or I allowed them to leave in that season or stop talking to you in that season. And you're mad at them, but I'm the one that allowed it
Yeah.
because this is, and this and this and this is what I wanted to do in you. And although I know it,
Yeah.
it doesn't make it less difficult in the moment.
It still hurts. And I think that's what it was. It's like I had leaned on her so much. She had became God for me. And I was doing things that were to her approval. And God was saying something else, but I could not hear God's voice because her voice was the loudest voice in my life.
So what is in that area, in that relationship, in that role that she played where she was the loudest voice, what would you say is your biggest regret? Like in that season, a decision that you made, maybe that she encouraged, or she said, like, this is what you need to do. Like, do you have any major regrets from that time?
Well, it stems a little deeper than just that time. That time was like the straw that broke the camel's back. But the original time was having an abortion. So I've had 3 abortions, and it was 4 babies. And because I was such a people pleaser, I just did it because somebody else said it was a good idea. So the first guy that I had the abortion with, he was afraid of my mom. And his story is that we need to do this because we don't want your mom to be mad at us. And of course, I'm 18. I've had a series of bad events up until this moment. And I was like, I guess so. Okay, yeah, let's do it. Not understanding the repercussions that it was going to have for me later, not understanding how it was going to take my life into such a downward spiral that I didn't even know I was spiraling. It was spiraling so fast. And I didn't tell my mom. I kept it a secret. I literally had the abortion. One of my friends took me. I had the abortion, got off the table, and went back to work. And I worked the rest of my shift, and I just carried on like nothing ever happened. I hid the medicine in my room. Why? I don't know. I just never said anything, and I just did it. And when she found the medicine, she was so disappointed. She's like, why didn't you tell me? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know why I didn't say anything. And so, and then of course me and the guy breaks up, you know, because of just differences, and nothing really stays together after an abortion. You know, like death has literally, and destruction has literally entered your life after that point. And so then my second abortion, I told my mom, and she was like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know, you know. And so here's another situation where I could have said, I'm not doing this, it's not right, yada, yada, yada. But God intervened on that one. So I'm laying on the ultrasound table, because they give you an ultrasound before you have the abortion. And the nurse says, And I said, what's And she's like, do you really want to know? And I'm like, yeah, tell me, like, what's up? And she's like, it's twins. And I was like, oh. So I go to the phone. This is when pay phones were still around, so how old I am. So I go to the pay phone, and I call him, and I say, hey, can we make this work? And he was like, I told you I don't want to have nothing to do with you. I already got a baby on the way, yada, yada, yada. No, he going off, cuss words and all. And I'm like standing there stunned, like, okay. And I go and do it again. And I said, so after that one, I'm like, okay, this is not right. Now, mind you, I was not saved. I didn't get saved until I was about 25, 26 years old. I think I might be around 20, 21, maybe. So I was like, this ain't right. Something does not feel right about this. I can't keep doing this. Like, we need to stop. So I made a promise to myself that I would never do this again. And I was just going to give me some birth control. Not stop having sex, but give me some birth control. Not realize how much you need to love yourself and fix yourself, Jasmine. I'm going to give me some birth control. So I got birth control. I didn't have another one after that, but we did not talk about Bruno. We did not discuss how do I feel. We did not talk about anything. And then when I moved to Mississippi, the cycle continued. And I was about 25, 26 when I moved to Mississippi, and met a guy, got pregnant, told my mom her stuff. Now, you know, when you're in trauma, you hear what you want to hear. And at this point, I am completely mentally out of my mind. I probably should have been checked in. And me and my mom were fussing. I was living with her, and I heard, well, might as well go ahead and get you an abortion because you ain't keeping this one either. She says that she said it's whatever your choice is. Now, all I heard was, you ain't keeping this one either. Get you an abortion. And I said, well, I ain't got no money, so I can't get no abortion. And we having a baby. Baby, next thing I know, I'm being hoisted up to Jackson. The money has been paid. I didn't pay it. I don't know who paid it. And I'm laying on the abortion table, and I am crying my eyes out. God, I'm sorry.
Because you didn't want to.
Because I did not want to do it.
Yeah.
And so that was about 24 years ago. The first one was 24 years ago. I had a 24-year-old, two 21-year-olds, and about a 17-year-old, 18-year-old right about now. And I just did not talk about it no more. And I think, so after that last abortion, that's when I really started to spiral. Like work-wise, I was functionable, you know, because you got to work, you got to make money, you got to show up, you know. I'm stable in that way. But relationally, I was out of control. So I was listening to the radio. And by this time, I had Joy Empowerment. You know, I was married to
your previous husband.
Previous husband. And I was listening to the radio, and the lady was like, they were talking about all the aborted baby fetuses that they were harvesting and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm listening to the radio, and the lady said, if you had an abortion, you are a murderer. Yeah, you need to repent. You are, and I kept hearing, you are a murderer. You are a murderer. You murdered God's children.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, oh my God. And I was in tears because I've never thought about it that way, because in the community that I grew up in, it was normal. That's what they did. It was a form of birth control. birth control in my community at the time. And we just didn't know no better.
Yeah.
And so hearing this Christian woman tell me that I am a murderer, and if I don't repent, I am going to hell.
Oh, she took it down.
Oh, baby, she went there, okay? She went there, and I am destroyed. I called Pastor McGee. I love my pastor. I called Pastor McGee, and I was like, I have something to tell you. And he was like, okay, come on in, you know? And so I go in, I tell him the story, and he's looking at me like, okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So we went through counseling. I went through counseling with him with that, and I had got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm ready to share my story. I feel like I've repented. I'm still working on forgiving myself, and I'm in the middle of this marriage. I don't have the support of my mother, and all I have is God. Yeah. So years later, like last year, okay. Years later, like last year, I seen one of my old clients, and I was telling her I got remarried, and that we were having some fertility issues, and I was just trusting God. And she says, "Well, have you named your babies?" I looked at her and said, "Ma'am, that is morbid. Like, why would I name my children? Like, in my mind, they're not even children. They're just abortion A, B, and C." She said, "Then you're not healed." She was like, women that have miscarriages name their children. They have little funerals for their children. She was like, why is it that you've had an abortion and you don't get to name your children? They're still yours. And I was just like in a state of shock. Like my guts were being ripped out again. That was just as loud as the woman calling me a murderer. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, they're not real. Like I have to dissociate my mind from what I've done.
Yeah.
Because they're not real. And she's like, then you're not healed. Let me give you this lady's number. So I called the lady, and it's a great program called Abortion Recovery, and it's out of Canada. And I was so excited to take the class because I'm like, God, so you set this up, right? Because like this is nothing but God. I have massaged this lady for 10 years.
Yeah.
10.
And she just now saying
And she's just now telling me this after not seeing her for 5 years. And I was like, okay, you're up to something, buddy. What is it? So I signed up, take the class, and it completely wrecked me, rebuilt me, and healed me.
That's so good.
Yeah. Any questions before we get into the abortion recovery class?
Ooh. So,
excuse me.
Prior to finding out the abortion recovery class process, you thought you were healed.
Yes. Because I had repented.
You confessed your sins. People knew about it. You had told your testimony. Yep. You went through counseling.
Yep.
And so you're like, oh, I'm good.
Yeah. She said, no, you're not good. That's the first step, is to admit that you've done it.
Yeah.
And you've repented, you've turned, you've never done it again. So you truly are in the act of repentance, but you're not healed. And we don't even think it's room for healing. First of all, you can't even admit. People won't even let you acknowledge the fact that you've had a baby and you can heal from what you've done to your baby.
Yeah.
It's like you did this to yourself. You don't deserve to heal because you're a murderer, and you don't deserve to heal. You don't deserve compassion. You don't deserve anything.
Yeah.
So you literally have to tuck that sucker in the back of your neck and hope for the best. Because nobody gives you room to heal. You don't get to talk about it. You don't get to acknowledge it. You literally do it and never speak of it again. It is the deepest, darkest secret you'll carry for the rest of your life until somebody says, hey, there's a class.
Yeah. There's so much to unpack there because it makes me think of people who like even may be incarcerated and they think that, or we sometimes on the outside think like, oh, they're just such terrible people. Like they're so bad. They've done so many things. And yet, and still we'll be like, maybe they can't be forgiven. Maybe they can't actually heal from it. Maybe they can't grow from it. And we don't always say it out loud,
No.
especially as Christians. But I think in the back of our minds,
Absolutely.
we believe that.
Absolutely.
Still.
I still, right up until before I finished the class, I still thought it was a piece of me that could probably potentially go to hell because God was not pleased with what I've done. Like, I have, and then here kicks in people pleasing and perfectionism. Now I have to be a super Christian because of what I've done.
Have to go above and
beyond.
Yeah.
Because I can't forgive myself.
Yeah. Ooh.
So nobody else does. So anytime I make a mistake, anytime I say the wrong thing, anytime I do something that is completely out of character, I am ridiculed because I'm operating in perfectionism. Yeah.
That's deep. So with the class, what are the major differences between that and just like going to counseling, like going to therapy?
So they hold you accountable. They make you share your story. So it's two counselors, and then they have a scribe in the group that's not in the group. So she's watching, but she's scribing for the group. And then it's you and maybe two other people. And with the two other people in the class, you have to share your story amongst all of us. So everybody in the group has had an abortion. Everybody, so it's two people that's already healed, and then y'all three are, fresh in. So they make you tell your story. So the book makes you go through these series of events of what triggers you. And so you got to write down all your triggers, and then they make you tell your triggers out loud. I did not realize going to the doctor was a trigger for me. Any doctor, dentist, just a checkup. And it makes sense now that I'm an adult. I will literally suffer with a cold instead of going to the doctor because I am triggered every time I go to the doctor. Didn't even know it. So simple things like that. Yeah. So I'm telling her, like, this is what I'm triggered with. And then the other girl says this is what she's triggered with. And the other girl shares this is what she's triggered with. And all of our triggers are the same. Even down to the counselors.
Yeah, like not even realizing that there's a commonality because of what you've went through.
Yeah, it's a side effect to abortions that nobody knows because we don't talk about. So they make you tell your story, and then they make you remember every little finite detail of what happened that day and leading up to that day. So you have to remember what were you wearing. Some people can remember every detail. I could not. My brain had did a wonderful job of
repressing,
compartmentalizing it to the point where I couldn't even remember one of the guys' names. Like, that's how deep I buried it.
Yeah.
And so I inboxed one of my old friends. I was like, hey, what was your cousin's name? And he sent me the picture, and literally, like, the floodgates, like almost like in the Matrix when he opened that file cabinet and it kept going. It was just like that. And I was like, oh my God, like, I completely forgot about this.
Yeah.
And then here comes the emotions. Here comes the sadness. Here comes the shame, the guilt, the depression. And I'm like, why am I feeling like this?
Yeah,
like,
brace myself.
Like, hold on.
For the
like,
turbulence.
These are, I thought I were past this. I was not. I haven't dealt with it. I buried it. So now I got to walk through every single detail of this event, and then share it amongst the people.
And it's so good because I think we and as people in general don't tend to realize about the little details, the finite things, like a sound, the scent, the something that just happened to be passing by at the exact moment when that traumatic event, because it's trauma, when it was happening, could be still triggering you.
Absolutely.
And if you don't deal with it, you don't realize that you're even being triggered.
Yeah.
You don't know why. You smell something and all of a sudden you get like sick or you get upset because you heard a certain sound. Somebody, like, they could say, hey girl, to you, and you immediately get mad. Now you think you don't like them, but it was something that happened years ago.
All of that and beyond.
Right.
I mean, down to just a word. Like hearing a word somebody saying, you're not, our family's not even coming. And your brain instantly goes into, I'm not family. What am I doing? I'm overstepping my boundaries. You just instantly are triggered. And you don't even realize you're triggered. Like, when I tell you, Ieshia, I have been operating in a 24-year-long trigger. And everything that I had experienced from my very first abortion until abortion recovery was part of the trigger. I was the one that was operating out of perfectionism, rejection, shame, bitterness, jealousy, and idolization. Like, I was so jealous, Ieshia. Like, a lot of people, I think it's only a few people know, like, the extent of the jealousy that I carried. But I was so jealous. Like, I hated to see women get pregnant. And I didn't realize that was a side effect. I couldn't stand baby showers. Like, I would cringe at baby showers. But they tell you, in order to be a good Christian, you got to sow seeds where you want to grow. So here I am, sowing seeds with jealousy attached to them. Because
that's so good, though, because I remember at one point, I was sowing seeds, not with jealousy attached, but like a little bit of bitterness attached to them. And the Lord I was sitting at our South location, walking through the door of the sanctuary at that time, and the Lord told me, "You might as well not sow it. You might as well not sow it. You're not going to get anything off of it because Scripture says that the Lord loves a cheerful giver. If you're not cheerfully giving, if you're giving with a little bit of bitterness, you give in a little bit of hatred, give in with a little bit of jealousy, then you're not going to reap a good harvest from that. It's like you didn't sow it at all.
It's tainted. But we're not allowed to talk about how jealous we are unless we're stealing somebody's man. Or we're hating on what somebody else has. Or you're trying to steal something. Or you're going to kill somebody because you're so jealous. No. My jealousy was because I aborted my children. And now I don't get the opportunity to redeem what I've done. That's why I was jealous.
Yeah.
I didn't want what you had. I wish that I would not have done it, you know? But now, because we're taught to sow seeds where we want to grow, so I'm going to pour all my love and affection into your family. And then something's going to happen because I'm going to do something that's going to ruin this relationship. And then I'm going to be upset and feel like, oh, kids were taken away from me. Here's something else being taken away from me because I'm not doing the work to get healed.
That's good. Because you had so many friends at that time who were getting pregnant, who were having kids. You were throwing baby showers, still showing up.
Faithfully. Loving their babies to the end of the moon. Like, I love their babies. And I don't wish no bad. It was no jealousy or hatred towards them. It was just an internal disdain of what I've done to myself that I don't get the chance to be redeemed from. And that's what abortion recovery taught me. I really did not want a baby with my ex. I wanted redemption. I wanted to say, see, look what the Lord has done. He's giving me this baby and I'm worthy. But really I was saying, God, you don't love me unless you give me a baby.
When the redemption was in the finished work of the cross.
Exactly.
Not in...
Give me something that I want to prove to myself that you love me. I need you to prove that you love me, because if you're not proving this to me, you don't love me. And the only way you can do it is by giving me a baby.
When he really wanted to work all that other stuff out of you.
When he said, baby, as soon as you repented that first time, I done forgave you.
Yeah.
You need to accept this from me.
That's so good.
But I can't accept it. So in the class, one of my biggest, like, pivotal moments in the class was, I kept saying, well, when I forgive myself, then I'll be healed. Like, then I'll be able to have this aha moment, you know, once I forgive myself. And Miss Karen looked at me, she said, well, you don't have the power to forgive yourself. And I said, lady, you done missed God. Like, you've been on all this time. You miss God. And she said, no, really, if you had the power to forgive yourself, you would not need God. She's like, what you have to do is receive and accept his forgiveness. And I was just dumbfounded. I said, so you telling me these two little interchangeable words has kept me in bondage?
Yeah.
Because I did not understand that I had to receive his love, receive his forgiveness.
Because you can't forgive yourself.
Because I can't forgive myself. And I need to be punished for what I've done.
Because really, you can't even love yourself.
Come on.
Without first receiving love.
Exactly.
Especially because, and that's why, like, for me, the affirmations are such a big thing, because we're our own worst critics.
Absolutely.
You know, like, we're our own, you know, like half the time I'd be like, Ieshia, girl, what is you doing? Like, right. I can't stand myself. And so for me, like, the affirmations were definitely that turning point where I'm like, you are worthy. Like, God still loves you anyway. And it's just a constant reminder, because I need that reminder every day.
Absolutely.
Every single day.
Absolutely.
Because I can't love myself without first receiving the love from him and him saying, like, Ieshia, you're worthy of being loved. So at the place that you're at now, because I know you mentioned that you were having fertility issues, have you come to a point of acceptance?
Yes. So I'm at the point now where I'm like, okay, God, if you want me to have it, it'll be mine. But I no longer want redemption. I don't want the get back. I don't want the, see, look, I'm perfect. You know, like, no, I don't want that. Like, and then I'm really asking myself, did I really ever want a baby? Or did I really ever want redemption? Only wanted redemption. And that's such a hard conversation to have with God, because I've wanted this for so long. Like, it was like this driving force to having this perfect family, you know. Family's not perfect unless you have a baby, because that's what has been displayed to me. And so knowing that I've idolized relationships and babies and family and all these relational things, it made me take a step back and say, okay, God, like, is this what you want from me, or is this something that I've made up for myself? You know, I still haven't got the answer, but I have peace.
Because I think a lot of times it's hard for us to really remember that, like, God knows me better than I know myself. Right? I remember a couple years ago when I first started doing affirmations over myself, one of my very first affirmations was that I give myself permission to change. The moment that I said that, literally the next day I was like, I like M&Ms more than I like Kit Kats. And it was just something that was so small, but my entire life, like, my parents always bought me Kit Kats, right? Tyrell would buy me Kit Kats. And after that, because I have to eat any chocolate frozen.
Okay.
That was me. Like, you got to freeze the chocolate first. It's the only real way I like it. But after I started saying that affirmation, after I gave myself permission to change my thoughts, my ideas about myself, I realized I don't like frozen M&Ms. I just like M&Ms.
Right.
And maybe I was freezing the other chocolate because I don't really like them that much. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so it was something that small in giving myself permission to change my ideas about who I think that I am. When in reality, God created me. He knows me. He knows exactly what he created me with, all of the desires that I have. So you talked about kind of being in that healing journey and finishing up your abortion recovery class, and you also talked about having some infertility issues. Are you and your husband at a place where y'all are considering foster, adoption, like anything of that nature?
So we haven't gotten there yet. We haven't given up hope that God can do a miracle, but we had to take a pause because it was really, really mentally exhausting.
Yeah.
So I think now we're just in a healing process, understanding that I wanted redemption more than I wanted a baby. That was hard to like wrap my mind around, and that being a side effect of abortion, because the moment you have an abortion, you instantly now want to have another baby. And so it's like now you need it. It's like a drug. And so knowing that that's the side effect, I'm like, do I really want a baby? Or did I just really want redemption? So really having these conversations with God, trying to have the conversations with God, because part of me, I don't even want to talk about it. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to talk about it. I just want to believe I'm having a baby. But then part of me is like, no, we really need to have this conversation, because if it doesn't happen, are you going to continue to be mad at God? Are you going to feel like he doesn't love you? You know, all of these thoughts, because that's where the enemy really plays with my mind. See, he really doesn't love you. You haven't gotten pregnant yet, you know? And I'm like fighting for my life and my mind in that aspect. So even though adoption would be great and all of these other things would be so great, I really want my mind to be in a place where if God is saying you've already had your babies, you have babies. They're in heaven with me. So
And you're going to meet them one day.
And I'm going to meet them one day.
And they've already forgiven you.
Yeah.
And they're so excited to meet you.
Exactly.
And get to know you. That's, yeah.
So it's like, I have babies. So just the acknowledgement of the fact that I do have children, they're just not here on this earth. It just kind of, it's like one of those cringy topics. So to make a long story short, we're still just practicing and praying.
And amen to the practicing and the praying.
Yeah, that's what we are.
A little bit of both.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, you mentioned that even after the abortion recovery class, you still had to go back in therapy.
Absolutely. At the end of abortion recovery, they make you have a memorial for your children. And so I didn't realize how delusional I was until that very moment. And so I had worked through I had cried all that week. They want you to get a little box together, like a keepsake box, put their birthdays in it, their names, and like little trinkets to represent your children, you know, because it's an actual memory box. And so I wrote their names out. I wrote their birth, like potentially around the year they would be born, because I can't remember still. And I had my little box, and they want you to have a memorial for your babies. And so the girl that went before me, she is just choked. I mean, she is sobbing. And I'm like, oh, God be with her. Give her strength, Lord. And I am just delusional. Like, it's not my turn next. And so I gather my little babies. So they have you get like baby dolls or bears and wrap them up like a mummy, basically.
Okay.
And they have them put you in your arm, and you're reading your letter that you've wrote to your babies and to God, and you're basically eulogizing your children. And so I start with my first sentence, and I bust out in tears. And I'm so angry. I'm like, why am I crying? Like, I shouldn't be crying. Like, I've dealt with this. I've done this. And she's like, it's okay. Cry. Like, go through the emotions. You're grieving. Go through the emotions. And I'm like so frustrated, because I'm like, I shouldn't be crying. I shouldn't be having these emotions. It's stupid. I don't want to do it. And she's like, keep going. I'm like, okay, fine. And I can't even get through the letter. I am hysterically crying. And they want you to send a song afterwards. And so as I'm like, earlier that week, I'm going through my song, and I'm like, and God said, Come Out of Hiding by Stephanie Greichinger. And I'm like, I don't know if I want that song. You know, I'm just kind of like, I don't, you know, just being defiant, you know.
So good, though.
And so, and I sent it in anyway. So I'm like, fine, I'm just going to send it in. And when she starts singing, Come Out of Hiding, You're Safe Here With Me. No need to hide what I've already seen. And I'm just like, and now I'm like ugly crying.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, I am just a wreck. And I'm trying. So then when you surrender your babies, I'm like trying to lay them on the couch. And it felt like I hit a brick wall. And I'm like, and I heard God say so sweetly, He says, now you can no longer hold this as your point of trauma. Now,
because you'd made it your identity.
This was my identity. Now you no longer can have this as a place of your hurt. When you give these babies to me, you're officially healed. Are you ready? Like, this is it.
He asked you, are you ready?
Are you ready?
Because you got to be ready to be healed.
You got to be ready to be healed. And he says, are you ready?
I mean, it's just like the scripture Jesus has, will you be made whole?
Mm-hmm. He says, are you ready
to
let this go? You no longer can hold this as a place of your hurt, your pain, your frustration, your jealousy, your bitterness, your shame, your guilt. You can no longer hold it. Are you ready to give it to me? And I wrestled with that thing because it had become my identity. And I'm like, as I'm trying to get the babies to the couch, basically, and I'm yelling this out, and I'm like, why can't I do this? Why is this so hard? Why can't I let this go? Like, I want to let this go. I've held on to this for so long. I'm ready to let it go. And I finally gave the babies to God. Like, I had to physically give them to him. And at that moment, it felt like a weight had been lifted off of my head.
Yeah.
And it was like it's almost like I came out of the grass, like a new plant. Like, I came out of the soil, and it was like, this is what the sky looks like. This is what the ground looks like. This is what air feels like. It was like I could finally see for the first time. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, okay, like, this is what healing looks like. I was so excited. And it's like I took a deep breath, and he said, are you ready? I said, ready for what? And I fell off the back of a cliff. And I'm like free falling. And I'm like, wait, hold on. I'm falling, and there's nothing for me to hold on to. He said, no, there's nothing but me. Are you going to hold on to me? Are you going to sit next to me, next to my hip like a little kid? Come sit right here. It's me and you. You have nothing to hold on to but me.
So in counseling, you've been figuring out your new identity.
Yeah.
Who is Jasmine.
Yeah.
And I just had this thought the other day. I'm standing in the bathroom, and I'm like, Ieshia MacArthur, there's so much she hasn't done, right? Ieshia has done a lot, but Ieshia MacArthur is a completely different person.
Yeah.
And I have to figure out who she is and who she is. So you are now Jasmine Jordan.
Yep.
And you are starting your traveling business, and you're doing all those things. Not necessarily that's what you've thrown yourself into or that's your identity, but you're finding new things that you like.
Yes. So I've always loved to travel. So my mother was in the military. We lived in Australia and Puerto Rico until I was like 12. And then we came back stateside, and we lived in Cleveland. And then she got her wild hair and said, you know what? I'm moving to Gulfport, Mississippi, where the sun shines. I'm like, dude, the sun shines in Texas as well. But apparently God needed us here. Okay, so we're here. But I love to travel. I love to go and to see. And with travel agency, it allows me to travel and get a discount and make money at the same time. Sign me up. Like,
For the discounts alone.
The discounts alone. And, being able to change people's lives, to give them the opportunity to, instead of buying presents, let's go on vacation at Thanksgiving time and Christmas. Instead of spending $3,000-$4,000 on toys that they're going to throw away in 6 months, you could have took them to the Bahamas and they'll never forget it. You know what I'm saying? So instead of spending all that money on something that they do not want, that if they do want, it's only temporary. But take them to some of my fondest memories as a child was being on the beach with my mother. Now, she might have been asleep in the hammock, okay, because that's just what it is. But some of my fondest memories are being at the beach, playing in the ocean, watching the surf, the sound, the sand. It's some of the beautiful memories. Like, I don't remember what I got for Christmas none of them years.
And I love it because, number one, you have traveled, but typically when I think of vacation, I think of rest. So I'm going somewhere else just to be able to sleep. But it's going to be prettier.
Exactly. And warmer.
Right. But when people get with you, you're able to say, like, well, why don't you do this experience? Or why don't you try this? And so now they have this plethora of things that they're able to do and learn and grow as a person, as an individual, and say like, oh, I really do like that.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know I like this, you know. So I love it. And I actually looked it up one time.
Okay.
Not to become a travel agent, but the prices like that I was going to spend, like I was looking up a cruise, right? If I booked it myself, it was one price. If the travel agent booked it, it was the exact same price. And they would get me like discounts and free stuff. And so I was like, I might as well.
Exactly.
Book with a travel agent.
Exactly. And then it takes the legwork out of it. Like I do all the legwork. And so listen, I like to stay at 5-star places, right? But I want it at a 2-star price. Like I want to ball on a budget.
Yeah.
I mean, now if I had 10 bands to spend on something exotic, I'm going to try to spend half of that.
Yeah.
And save the other half. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to shop for you the way I would shop for myself. You know, like,
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Like, I'm going to really, like, if I would not stay there, I'm not going to introduce you to nothing like that. That's, no, yuck. You know, so I shop like I would shop for myself. And all the things that I would want to do, I'm going to introduce you to those things. Like, because the world is so big and so magnificent, and we see just a little bit living here.
Literally a little bit.
Like, it's so much more than what we see with our eyes, and then once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's beautiful. I love it. Everybody should take a vacation.
I need one right now.
Call me.
Well, thank you so much. This literally has been a mind-blowing, amazing episode. I learned something new about every person, about myself, every single time. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And we might have to get you back.
I'm ready.
There was so much that we didn't get to cover.
No, it's a whole bunch more to the story.
Yeah. Thanks again.
You're welcome.
See you next time. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode. You've heard from us. Now we want to hear from you. I do prayer videos every single day. Comment your name and what you want me to pray for below, and follow me on any social platform at I'm Ieshia Danielle so that you'll be able to see when your prayer video gets posted. Until next time, see you later.